The courtroom was a pressure cooker, the air thick with whispers and the weight of 1,000 eyes. A 3-year-old boy, barely tall enough to peer over the witness stand, stood trembling, his tiny finger aimed at the police dog snarling in the corner. 2 words slipped from his lips, "bad dog," and the room erupted into chaos, unraveling a truth buried under years of lies and prejudice. Malik Jackson sat in the defendant's chair, his calloused hands clenched, sweat beading on his brow. He was a black man in his 30s, a mechanic with no criminal record, yet here he was, accused of assaulting an officer during a routine traffic stop. The evidence? A blurry dashcam video, a white officer's testimony, and a police dog with a history no one dared question. Malik's wife, Aisha, sat in the gallery, her eyes burning with defiance, clutching their son Jamal's teddy bear like a lifeline. She'd fought to keep Jamal out of this, but the court had insisted he testify. A toddler in a courtroom. What kind of justice was this? The prosecutor, a sharp-suited man named Whitaker, paced like a predator. His voice dripped with condescension as he leaned toward Jamal. "Now, son, you're sure you saw your daddy hit that officer? You wouldn't lie, would you?" The question was a blade, slicing through the room's fragile calm. Aisha's breath caught, her nails digging into the bear. Malik's lawyer, a weary public defender named Ms. Torres, objected, her voice drowned by the prosecutor's theatrics. The judge, an older white man with a face carved from stone, banged his gavel. "Order," he barked, but his eyes flickered with unease. Something about this case didn't sit right, and everyone felt it. Jamal, in his tiny blue jacket, looked from his father to the dog. The German shepherd, named Rex by the police department, sat rigid beside Officer Daniels, the man Malik allegedly attacked. Daniels was broad-shouldered, with a smirk that hadn't left his face since the trial began. Rex's ears twitched, his teeth bared just enough to unsettle the room. To most, he was a symbol of law and order. To Jamal, he was a monster. The toddler's memory of that night was vivid: flashing lights, his father's shouts, the dog's jaws snapping inches from Malik's leg. But no one had asked the boy what he saw. Not until now. "Bad dog," Jamal repeated, his voice small but piercing. The gallery gasped. Daniel's smirk faltered. Whitaker froze mid-stride, his polished demeanor cracking. "What did you say, kid?" he snapped, stepping closer. Ms. Torres shot to her feet. "Your Honor, this is intimidation." The judge raised a hand, his gaze locked on Jamal. "Let the boy speak," he said, his voice softer than before. Aisha's heart pounded. She knew what those 2 words meant. She'd seen the bruises on Malik's leg, the ones the police claimed came from resisting arrest. She'd heard Jamal's nightmares, his cries about the mean dog that hurt his daddy. The night of the incident was seared into Malik's mind. It was a humid summer evening, and he'd been driving home from the shop, Jamal asleep in the back seat. Blue lights flashed in his rearview. Officer Daniels had pulled him over for a broken taillight, a lie Malik later confirmed was false. The stop escalated fast. Daniels demanded Malik step out, his tone sharp, his hand on his holster. When Malik hesitated, asking why, Rex was unleashed. The dog lunged, teeth grazing Malik's thigh as he shielded Jamal's car seat. Malik's only crime was raising his hands to protect his son. But to Daniels, that was assault. In the courtroom, the truth hung like a storm cloud, ready to break. Jamal's words had cracked the facade, and the room buzzed with tension. Whitaker recovered, his voice oily. "Your Honor, the child's confused. He's too young to understand what he saw." But the judge wasn't listening. He leaned forward, studying Jamal. "Son, why do you say, 'bad dog'?" he asked. The room held its breath. Jamal's lip quivered, but he pointed again at Rex. "He bit Daddy. Daddy didn't do nothin', dot." The simplicity of his words cut deeper than any lawyer's argument. Aisha stifled a sob. Malik's shoulders sagged, relief warring with fear. The gallery erupted again, some shouting in support, others in disbelief. Daniel shifted, his hand tightening on Rex's leash. The dog growled low, sensing the shift in the room. Ms. Torres seized the moment. "Your Honor, the child's testimony aligns with physical evidence we've been denied access to. The defendant's injuries were never properly examined. We request an immediate review of the dashcam footage and the dog's training records." Whitaker scoffed, but his confidence was slipping. The judge nodded, his face unreadable. "Granted," he said. The word landed like a thunderclap. Behind the scenes, the case had been a powder keg from the start. Malik's arrest had sparked protests in their small town of Crestwood, a place where racial tension simmered beneath a veneer of civility. The local police department had a reputation whispers of excessive force, of black drivers targeted for minor infractions. Malik wasn't the first, but Jamal's words might make him the last. The dashcam footage, which the prosecution had downplayed, was suddenly under scrutiny. So were Rex's records, which Ms. Torres suspected would reveal a pattern of aggressive behavior swept under the rug. As the trial adjourned for the day, Aisha rushed to Malik, who was still cuffed. "You're coming home," she whispered fiercely. He nodded, his eyes on Jamal, who clutched Ms. Torres' hand. The lawyer, exhausted but determined, was already planning her next move. She'd seen too many cases like this, too many black men railroaded by a system that assumed their guilt. But this time, AToddler's courage had shifted the tide. The next day, the courtroom was packed. Protesters stood outside, their signs demanding justice. Inside, the dashcam footage played on a grainy screen. The room watched in silence as Malik's pleas echoed, "I'm not resisting. I have my son," while Rex's barks drowned him out. The video showed no assault, only a man trying to protect his child. Daniel's face reddened as the footage rolled. The dog's training records, reluctantly provided, revealed multiple complaints of unprovoked attacks, all dismissed. Whitaker's arguments crumbled. He tried to pivot, claiming Malik's tone provoked the dog, but the judge wasn't swayed. The gallery buzzed with hope, with anger, with the weight of a truth finally exposed. Jamal, too young to grasp the stakes, sat on Aisha's lap, playing with his teddy bear. But his words had done what no one else could. They'd forced the room to listen. The judge called for order, his voice heavy. "This court has a duty to the truth," he began, his eyes sweeping the room. "And the truth, as spoken by a child, cannot be ignored." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The charges against Malik Jackson are dismissed." The room exploded cheers, sobs, shouts of "justice." Malik fell to his knees, tears streaming as Aisha wrapped her arms around him. Jamal ran to them, his tiny arms hugging his father's neck. But the fight wasn't over. Outside, the protests grew louder, demanding systemic change. Ms. Torres met with reporters, her voice steady. "This isn't just about one man. It's about a system that lets this happen." Malik and Aisha, now free to rebuild, vowed to join the fight. They'd teach Jamal to speak truth, to stand tall, no matter the odds. The victory in the courtroom was a spark, not a resolution. Malik Jackson walked out of the courthouse a free man, his hand gripping Aisha's, Jamal perched on his shoulders, clutching his teddy bear. The crowd outside roared some in celebration, others in fury. Signs waved high, "Justice for Malik," clashed with "Back the Blue." The air crackled with the kind of tension that could ignite a city. Crestwood wasn't just a town anymore, it was a microcosm of a nation wrestling with its conscience. Malik felt the weight of every stare. He wanted to go home, to lock the door and hold his family close, but the world wouldn't let him. Reporters swarmed, shoving microphones in his face. "Mr. Jackson, what's next? Are you suing the police?" Aisha pulled Jamal closer, shielding him from the chaos. Ms. Torres, ever the warrior, stepped in front. "My client needs time with his family," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. But Malik knew time wouldn't erase the scars, not the ones on his leg from Rex's teeth, nor the ones on his heart from a system that saw him as a threat before a man. That night, in their small apartment, Malik and Aisha sat at the kitchen table after putting Jamal to bed. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and the distant wail of sirens. "They'll come for us again," Malik said, his voice low. "Maybe not Daniels, maybe not a dog, but someone will." Aisha reached for his hand, her grip fierce. "Then we fight again," she said. "For Jamal. For us." Her eyes burned with the same fire that had carried her through the trial. Malik nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. Freedom felt fragile, like a promise written in sand. The next morning, Ms. Torres called. "They're suspending Daniels," she said. "And Rex is being retired. The department's under investigation." It was a start, but Malik knew it wasn't enough. The protests outside hadn't stopped, they'd grown. Community meetings were called, and Malik and Aisha were asked to speak. They hesitated. Malik wasn't a leader, just a mechanic who wanted to fix cars and raise his son. But Jamal's words, "bad dog," had made him a symbol, whether he liked it or not. At the first meeting, held in a packed church basement, Malik stood before a sea of faces, black, white, young, old, angry, hopeful. He wasn't sure what to say, but when he opened his mouth, the words came. "I didn't ask for this," he began, his voice steady. "I just wanted to take my son home. But they saw me a black man and assumed the worst. My boy had to save me. What does that say about us?" The room was silent, then erupted in applause. Aisha, beside him, spoke next, her voice raw. "This isn't just about Malik. It's about every black family who's afraid to drive, to walk, to live. We need more than apologies. We need change." The meeting sparked a movement. Crestwood's residents, once divided, began to really talk. Some white neighbors admitted they'd never questioned the police before. Others, mostly black, shared stories of their own encounters: traffic stops, suspicious glares, unwarranted searches. The conversations were messy, heated. A retired teacher argued the police were just doing their job. A young black woman countered, their job shouldn't mean ruining lives. Malik listened, his heart heavy but hopeful. Change wasn't a straight line, but it was starting. Officer Daniels, meanwhile, wasn't going quietly. He gave an interview to a local news station, claiming he was the victim, that Malik had been aggressive. He called Jamal's testimony coached. The interview reignited tensions. Protesters clashed outside the station, and social media exploded with hashtags, "Justice for Malik" versus "Blue Lives Matter." Malik and Aisha tried to shield Jamal, but the boy sensed the storm. "Why's everybody mad?" he asked one night, his eyes wide. Aisha hugged him close. "Because people don't agree on what's right, baby. But we're trying." Ms. Torres pushed forward, filing a civil suit against the police department. She uncovered more training logs showing Rex had been flagged for aggression but never removed, internal memos urging officers to crack down on certain neighborhoods. The evidence piled up, and the town's leadership squirmed. The mayor, a moderate who'd avoided the issue, called for a public forum. Malik and Aisha agreed to attend, despite the risks. "If we don't show up," Aisha said, "they'll say we're hiding." The forum was held in the high school gym, packed to the rafters. Malik stood at the podium, Jamal in his arms, Aisha by his side. The crowd was a mix: supporters, skeptics, and a few hecklers. Officer Daniels was there, too, in civilian clothes, his jaw tight. The mayor opened with platitudes about healing, but the room wasn't buying it. When Malik spoke, his voice was raw, unpolished. "I'm no hero. I'm just a man who loves his family. But I shouldn't have to prove I'm not a criminal every time I leave my house." He paused, looking at Jamal. "My son shouldn't have to save me from a dog." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Aisha took the mic. "We're not asking for pity. We're asking for fairness. For a system that doesn't assume guilt because of skin." Her words hit hard, and even the skeptics listened. Then a man in the back, red-faced, stood up. "What about the officers? They risk their lives." The room tensed, but Malik raised a hand. "I respect that," he said. "But respect goes both ways. That dog wasn't protecting anyone when it came for me." The forum didn't solve everything. Some left angrier than they came. But others stayed, talking in small groups, sharing stories. A white officer approached Malik afterward, his voice low. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't see it before. I do now. It wasn't much, but it was something." Malik nodded, unsure if he could trust it, but willing to try. Weeks turned to months. The civil suit gained traction, and the department settled, admitting fault in Rex's use. Daniels was fired, though he vowed to appeal. The town implemented new training, prioritizing de-escalation and bias awareness. Malik and Aisha became reluctant advocates, speaking at schools and churches. They didn't want the spotlight, but they wanted change. Jamal, now 4, started preschool, his laughter a reminder of why they fought. One evening, Malik took Jamal to the park. The same park where, a year ago, he'd driven past before the stop that changed everything. They played on the swings, Jamal's giggles filling the air. A white family approached, their daughter joining Jamal on the slide. The parents nodded at Malik, a small gesture, but one that felt new. Not perfect, but possible. As the sun set, Malik looked at his son, free and unafraid. The scars remained, but so did hope. Crestwood was still divided, but cracks of understanding were forming. The truth, spoken by a toddler, had forced a reckoning. It wasn't the end, but it was a beginning. What do you think? Where does justice lie in a story like this? How do we bridge the divide when trust is broken?